All right, welcome back to the Cyber Executive Podcast. We are at GPSEC St. Louis at the beautiful Energizer Stadium, hosted by GuidePoint Security, and I have my good friend Josh Bloss here. Josh, great to have you on the Cyber Executive Podcast.
Good. Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you, Mark, and I'm happy to be at this venue. It's a perfect spot for having these types of conversations.
Yeah, a little windy, a little cold, but other than that, it's warming up a little bit, or I'm just getting numb, one or the other. I don't know. So. Josh, one of the things that we were just talking about is, what's the new normal when it comes to training, the employees of your organization, because things are shifting so quickly, and to train them not only just on the IT side, but how to do things safely in there. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big thing for us, and we sort of talk about it from the stance of understanding your environment from a software and inventory standpoint. And so, I think we always come back to like baselining normal for our associates of this is what's, what you're expected to, how you're expected to interact with our security tools. If you're getting prompts through email, it's going to come in this vector from Mimecast. Or if you're getting an EDR alert, this is what it's going to look like. Or if you're getting emails from our associates that are asking for, verifying your authentication, this is what this process looks like. I think today, my biggest concern from a general associate standpoint is they don't know what's abnormal. And to your point, security and technology is changing so rapidly that they're getting prompted constantly. And our rote stance is a little bit like the terms and conditions you get whenever you log into a portal. It's, I'm just going to click accept. And that creates a big issue from a security standpoint, especially as you look at, we've made authentication easier with things like OAuth and SAML. But whenever you're extending permissions that you have to another third-party app, training people on what the expectation is on when you click allow and when you click deny, and making them aware of what the ramifications are if you click accept.
The other two things. Yeah, and you have the constant worry now because, we've seen, without throwing names out, of any of these third-party providers and authentication providers of having, one bug after another that's causing a leak of credentials or a leak of token that's allowing for replays and those sort of things. So, being aware of those and being able to detect those is a constant challenge that keeps going on.
For sure. It's definitely, it's the preventative, I'll say, is the training side, but we know that's not foolproof. People are never going to fully absorb that. So then it becomes, how do we detect token abuse, and how do we see like this isn't normal behavior for this user? They're accessing all these things that they normally wouldn't, even though they're allowed to. And then again, I think it comes back to, from the blast radius standpoint, it's also thinking about, okay, maybe if they're not accessing these things on a normal basis, how do we start to pare back some of that permission set, which is a harder nut to crack, I'll say. I mean, it's not an easy thing to say, I'm going to start taking these things away from you, because pretty much everybody's instant knee-jerk reaction for business is always, I think I might need that at some point in the future. So trying to manage that friction versus ease of use for our associates, just to manage that risk, I think is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah. And having them to where it's just a constant, inflow of new applications that's happening. And now you throw in Agentic AI and everyone that's, trying to go out and use their own version of it, their own flavor, and, all the third parties adding that too, just adds for more and more complications between identity security, data security, all that sort of things.
Yeah. Complexity is the thing that keeps us all employed, is trying to manage complexity. And I think that's the nature of this role, is everything's going to change. And how do you manage the change? How do you manage the complexity? And how do you try to, I'll say, clearly crystallize it to associates and really broader leadership of, how do we start to simplify again? Because I think we go through these sort of boom and bust phase on, we're going to integrate a lot of new things to see what sticks and see what's useful. And then we've got to come back and say, okay, let's pare this back down to something that's reasonable for our organization to be able to manage. Because if you don't, it's not sustainable in the long run.
Right. And that's where the conversations with the business really has to keep coming in, and having that awareness, and making sure they're understanding what the the ramifications of it, but yet still allowing them to continue doing what they need to do. They got to make the money, right?
Absolutely.
However, so we just got to make sure they're doing it safely.
For sure. Yeah. As I always say, we're not in the business of security. That's not how we make our money. It's certainly how we protect our money and protect our customers. But we have to find that line of how do we enable the business to find new ways to be successful, while at the same time also remembering that our core purpose is to protect our enterprise as a whole and protect our customers.
Yeah, and it's also a lot easier, I think, to some degree when you're in a regulated industry like banking.
Yep.
We both have been in banking, and you're still in it and that sort of things. But so having those regulatory components makes it a lot easier to have those reoccurring trainings because it's an audit item, right? And those examiners like that.
For sure. It's always helpful to have that to fall back to. I mean, I still try to pitch everything as like, this is the business imperative for why we need to do this.
Yeah.
Because at some point, in every environment, there is an ebb and flow there too of what the expectation is from the regulators. I think we're in a moment now where from a regulatory standpoint, they're pulling back on a lot of those expectations. And it really comes down to the individual organizations to continue to push forward with what they think is right from a security standpoint, because there's not an overarching regulatory body that's going to come in and hit us over the head with a hammer at the moment.
No, which is a good thing. It's given some flexibility. And I think that's because in banking, I think there's been a level of maturity that's kind of been there for a while. And so now it's kind of, okay, here's our new baseline. We're assuming you're doing that. So now let's look at the more future things that's happening and how do we, regulate those or, ask the right questions. So
yeah, absolutely. There's constant change again. I mean, it's just trying to manage against the change and make certain that, we stay abreast of all of those changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you very much for being on the podcast short, and enjoy the rest of the conference and try to stay warm here today. All right.
Absolutely.
All right,
Mark.
Josh, thank you.
Good seeing you.